Good morning. Good morning. It's Charmaine Hammond, and I'm so delighted you could join us today for this presentation on sponsorship. And I want to thank Ann Day and everyone at Company of Women for hosting this webinar today. Thank you so much. I love Company of Women, and I'll actually be speaking at Company of Women in Hamilton next week on Friday. This is an organization that I fell in love with immediately when I met Ann, and of course, the more and more I got to know about the Company of Women members, I thought, wow, this is an organization I definitely want to be a part of because they support one another, they help one another, they share and connect. So lovely to be here with all of you. You should be hearing my voice right now and seeing my picture on the screen. So if there's any difficulties, we actually have a chat box here that you can type in not only any challenges that you're having with technology, but better than that, if you can type in your questions, your comments, and even feel free to share ideas. One of the things I love about doing webinars is that we learn from each other. It's not just learning from whoever is hosting the webinar. I did a webinar recently on sponsorship, and I was so back and forth between the screen and speaking, and then my eyes drifting over to the chat box because the folks that were online live were having an amazing dialogue and sharing ideas and supporting each other at the same time. Feel free to type in your questions, type in your thoughts, your ideas. Good morning, Megan. Nice to meet you. Sandy, hello. If you can also type in where you're listening from. I always love to know who's on with us live and where you are listening from. I am in Vancouver today. Vancouver is where we live during the spring and summer. And then as soon as winter hits in Vancouver, it's rain, not snow, but as soon as winter hits, we hightail it to California and live in the San Diego area for 6 months. So it's a perfect scenario. I get to be near water all year, other than when I'm traveling to cold places in the winter to speak. And oh, wonderful. Hi, good morning. All right, so let's rock and roll here. Let me introduce myself because I know some of you, when I was looking at the registration list, I've never met you before. So you probably want to know, who is this Charmaine person, and what is she speaking about sponsorship, and what gives her the authority to do that? So let's go there. Hi, Leslie from Oakville. I used to live in Burlington, not too far from Oakville. In fact, my family is still all in Burlington, and I can't wait for next week to go back and see everybody. And Dolores from Erin, Ontario. And we've got Karen in Toronto, Sandy from Cambridge. Oh, wow, from all over. That's wonderful. So in terms of who I am and what I do, as I mentioned, I'm from the Burlington area, grew up there, left when I was about 25 years old to move to Alberta. So let's back up and talk a little bit about my career path. When I graduated college, I went through college to be a correctional officer. So I worked in jails. I worked in the Ontario Correctional Institute in Brampton. And then I really found my passion working with young offenders. And while I was in Ontario, I ran a custody facility for young offenders, and absolutely loved that job and worked with the most amazing people. So entrepreneurship in those days was not even on my mind. I loved having a job. I loved working with a team in that way. And then it was when I moved to Fort McMurray, I followed Christopher, the man I love, across the country. I moved to Fort McMurray, Alberta, which still feels like home in many ways to me. We were there 16 years. When I moved there, they didn't have a jail, so I had no job. I had to go back to school. And, you know, from the work I did in corrections, I really loved, I loved the process of helping people resolve conflict, helping people communicate, and being able to respond to crises and make everything okay. And that's where the idea for me to go back to school and be trained as a mediator came from. So I went back to school, I got specific training in mediation, and then also got a master's degree in conflict and analysis through Royal Roads University. Beautiful, beautiful university. And I opened up my own dispute resolution company. So that was 1997 when I opened up my company, Hammond International. It's, you know, going on 20 years, 21 years, and I've rebranded in that time. I don't mediate anymore, but what has stayed consistent is speaking and training, and I've been doing that for many, many years. Now, where the sponsorship piece comes in, I know some of you today have books or products. That's where my sponsorship idea came in. So let me tell you how I've worked with sponsorship, and we're actually going to dive right into some of the questions that came up before the webinar and some of the problems that people were facing with sponsorship. So in 2010, my first book, On Toby's Terms, which is about our dog Toby, was published by an incredible publisher in Del Mar, California. And quite honestly, before I met Betty, the publisher, I knew nothing about writing a book. Is anyone in that situation right now? You have a book and you're thinking, how the heck did I get here? I didn't even plan on being an author, folks. And I didn't know how to be an author, let alone write the book. And then I realized once you write the book, wow, that was the easy part in a sense. Marketing the book and selling the book and getting your message into the hands of readers around the globe, that's really the work. And it was a very different marketing strategy from, selling a service, selling my mediation services, for example. So I had a lot to learn, and fortunately for me, I had the right publisher. Betty is also a very accomplished author. She has more than 25 books in multiple languages, has won incredible awards. So my publisher knew what it was like to be an author and a speaker. And I got the best guidance and mentoring in the world from her. Now, when we were planning my book launch for On Toby's Terms in 2010, I thought, authors do book launches and they do book signings. And I thought, wow, I don't know about any of you, has anyone here planned an event before, whether it's business or personal, and you're getting the event going, you've got these great ideas, and all of a sudden you start becoming aware of how much this event is costing you? Just let me know if you've been there. Say, been there, done that in the chat box. That's what was happening to me. The more ideas I kept coming up with for this book launch, the bigger the cost was getting. And I thought, my gosh, I might have to scale back here. This is getting pretty outrageous. And I was watching Oprah the day that I was toying with, do I just make this smaller? What do I do? Because the budget is getting a bit ridiculous here. And I noticed at the end of the screen, on the Oprah show, it said things like Oprah's hairstyles were sponsored by such and such a salon, and Oprah's vehicle was sponsored by such and such a car company. Oprah's clothing supported by, and the list went on. It was this forever list of sponsors that were supporting Oprah. Now, let me be clear, I'm not Oprah. I know I'm a far cry away from Oprah, but she planted this amazing seed in my brain from watching the credits that day. And I thought, if Oprah can do this, maybe Charmaine Hammond can do this on a smaller scale. So I knew nothing about sponsorship really at that time, although I had done sponsorship when I worked for a nonprofit in Fort McMurray. I had to put together this really huge community event. It was a half-day event that turned into a 4-day event. And I believe the sponsorship I brought in for that event was about $250,000 cash sponsorship, and then a lot of in-kind sponsorship. So marketing for free, and what else? Printed materials, banners, stand-up banners, all the things that you need for an event. So I had a lot of experience doing this for other people. Doing it for yourself is a lot different. How many of you have found in business, just type your answer in the chat box to this one, how many of you found in business it's so much easier to promote and sell somebody else and their services than it is to promote and sell ourselves? So I'd love to hear from you on that. That was where I was. I was in that challenge of, oh, I can do this for other people and other events, but now I have to do sponsorship for myself. Well, the results were incredible. So what happened for me is that within a very short period of time, we got some people saying, so true, yes, corporate events on workplace health promotion and topics related to business, ROI, attendee fees were to cover all. And then we've got totally, absolutely. So people are getting what I'm saying here about it being so much easier to sell things for other people. And so I went into this feeling a little bit insecure, really. And but I was committed to it because I had my idea of what this launch was going to look like. And I thought, how can I also do this with other people's money? And what ended up happening is by launch day, the big live event that we had at this beautiful hotel, and we had a couple hundred people there. One of my favorite musicians, Justin Hines, who is actually from the Toronto area. I'm pretty sure a lot of you know his music. Justin was the inspiration actually for my On Toby's Terms book. I listened to his music the whole time I was writing On Toby's Terms. And there was one thing I really wanted was to have Justin there, and him and his wife were able to come. So it was a perfect event. It was just absolutely perfect. And I ended up having 40 sponsors. Amazing. So what happened is all of my printing was sponsored. So all my one sheets for the book, my bookmarks, my posters, anything that was printed other than my book was sponsored. All my stand-up banners, you know, the big stand-up banners that you use at events, those were sponsored. I had swag that was sponsored. I had actually a sponsor who purchased a big number of my books so that we could hand everybody a book when they came in, and it was gifted to them. So we didn't actually sell books at that event. We gave them away, and they were sponsored by people that I knew. And then my clothing was sponsored. You know, I didn't actually pay for clothing for about 3 years. Isn't that amazing? And I got to have a personal shopper that would help me shop for clothing. I just don't like clothing shopping, so she made it fun. Glenda from Caprice Consignment in Edmonton, which is where I was listening, was my clothing sponsor for many years. And I had a hair sponsor. I didn't pay for hairstyles and makeup and nails and even massages. And then, of course, a number of business services that I needed. So that's what came out of this fear and not knowing what to do in terms of sponsorship. Dolores says, wow. Thanks, Dolores. That's what I was saying at the end of the event. Wow. Wow, I need to do this more in my business. So that event became sort of I guess, the platform or the launching pad for me to continue looking at how sponsorship could help me. So if we fast forward, that was 2010, we're in 2016, and now I'm having my events that are sponsored. A lot of times as a speaker, I speak for no fee, and sometimes a sponsor will come on and help me with that. I get my book sponsored so that I can actually give away books to schools. I now, fast forward from 2010, I now have 5 books that have been published, and I'm featured in 6 others. And so I have sponsors that buy my books in bulk and donate them to schools and businesses. I still have printing sponsors, and I have sponsors that help with marketing and media. Sponsorship has become a really important part of my business model. And most recently, one of my biggest joys in life was in 2015, I launched a Million Acts of Kindness tour. That was so fun. It was a speaking and book tour, and my whole goal is to change the world through kindness. And we had a 32-foot RV, a motorhome sponsored by Fraser Way RV. They're in BC, but they actually have chapters all across, or businesses, sorry, all across Canada. And then we had Petland Canada, who has been an amazing support for us. You know, they actually raised more than $10,000 in their stores in 2 weeks by doing a project called Toonie for Team Toby. So again, Toby's our dog. And they sold these cutout paper paw prints in their stores and invited customers to get involved in changing the conversation about acceptance and bully prevention so that we could actually engage the customers in helping us spread our message of kindness and bully prevention. And the $2 that they would donate by purchasing the cutout paw print, the paper paw print, actually went to sponsoring books for schools across North America. And so these are some of the ways that sponsorship has helped. The tour was actually 6 weeks in a road trip right across North America, 14,000 kilometers. All of our hotels for my team were sponsored along the way. Some of our meals were sponsored. Our marketing was sponsored, and the list goes on. And you know what's so beautiful about sponsorship? I think certainly having the financial support and the support of services and products that are gifted to you in kind, but even more so than that, when you have a message to share with the world, you now have these other companies who believe in you so much, and they believe in your product or your service so much that they can't wait to jump on board and help you get your message out to as many people as possible. And that was probably the most valuable learning for me in this. that's a little bit about sponsorship and me and the ways that I've played with it. And I've had clients that have been really successful. One of my clients actually was planning an event, and she wanted to have a title sponsor. A title sponsor is really, you've seen them all the time. You know, this event is brought to you by such and such a company, or this radio show is powered by such and such a company. So that's kind of a title sponsor where the event is often even co-named with that particular sponsor. Now, she really wanted to have a title sponsor, and they had a very short time frame. It was less than 2 months away, which is really tough to get a sponsor when you're 2 months out from an event. And there was one particular group that she was really wanting to build relationships with, and so she began the relationship process. And they had this was an event that wasn't a large amount of money, so their biggest sponsorship level, I think, was $5,000, and she secured that for a title sponsor. First time, right out the gate, first person she went to, and she just tried the approach that I taught her. She was on a 1-hour webinar with me, it was a 2-hour workshop live with me. She was in a 2-hour workshop live, went and applied 3 things, and just huge success right out the gate. So what I'm going to teach you today absolutely works, and I'm going to teach you what you need to do to get ready. So with sponsorship, I want you all to write this down because it's so important. Sponsorship really is a marketing relationship. So I want you to actually say that in your head, lock it in, whatever you need to do. Sponsorship is marketing relationship. It's different than philanthropy. Many of you have done philanthropy. You've worked for nonprofits, you've volunteered as a board member, maybe on nonprofits, and you often have donors who cut a check for the nonprofit. That's more philanthropy. There isn't really an expectation in philanthropy that the person receiving the money or the organization receiving the money is going to actively promote them and help them achieve their marketing goals. In sponsorship, it's a marketing relationship. So when a company chooses to sponsor you or a product or a service you have, what they're doing is they're entering into a business relationship with you to have some ROI, return on investment. It's not like philanthropy. They're saying, here's your $5,000 or $50,000 or $200,000, run with it. They're saying, here's X amount of dollars, and we're going to work together to build ROI, return on investment, so that it's meaningful for both of us. Really important to understand the concept of it's a marketing relationship, because that'll help you navigate through everything that comes next. And we're going to be talking about what comes next. Now, just a reminder, as we're going through our time together, if you've got questions, put them out there. I want to hear your questions. This is being recorded too. I was asked if it's being recorded. It is, and you'll be able to listen to it over and over again, because sometimes we need information at different intervals. So sponsorship is a marketing relationship. Let's talk about a few of the problems that were identified in the questionnaire that people responded to when they registered. And thank you for doing that, by the way. One of the problems that people identified is that they're really unclear where to even start with sponsorship and how it could help them. And I love starting with that question, with that challenge. Where could sponsorship help you? Here's how we're going to answer that. Sponsorship can help you in many ways. So how many of you that are on live with us today, how many of you host events, whether it's workshops or webinars? Events don't have to be live. They could be virtual. If you can type in the chat box real quick, what kind of events, if you do, what kind of events that you have? Workshops, conferences, networking luncheons. It could be some kind of a presentation that you offer. Sponsorship can help with events. There are so many ways that sponsorship can help with events. Providing you a venue at no cost, helping you with marketing. It can also help you with the whole bringing people into the room. So swag, all those things that you need. Now I see someone, oh perfect, Betty's got, where is it, Betty? Workshops and retreats, awesome. So a couple of very different types of events. And with retreats, for example, you're often providing activities for people to do. So sponsorship can help with that part as well. We've got presentations. Maya or Mia, I'm not sure which way I pronounced your name, but thank you for putting that. Dolores, training, tasting training events on identifying the purity of olive oils and sensory culinary use of different types. Awesome. And actually, you just brought something up I'm going to mention right now, Dolores, so I don't forget. When you talked about tasting events, in the sponsorship world, they call that sampling. And sponsors who have products, often the best way for them to bring awareness to their product is by sampling opportunities. And so sampling is important. That's a way that sponsorship could be brought into your business that you may need opportunities for. Let me give you an example. Because our book is about our dog, I actually have other books that are not about the dog. They're personal development books and business books. But I'm going to use the dog one as an example because it has garnered a lot of sponsorship. One of the things that we use personally, because we have a big dog, is poop bags. I am not kidding you. We go through so many poop bags in a year. Those of you who have dogs, you totally know what I'm talking about. We also wanted to use poop bags that are environmentally friendly. I happened to be at a trade show, and there was this incredible product called the Original Poop Bags. They're out of Chicago, and just a great product. It's compostable, it's biodegradable, and they support schools and children learning about the environment and respect for pets. And I thought, wow, this feels like a fit. I walked away from that event with a poop bag sponsor who has sponsored me now for 3 years. And Paul from the Original Poop Bags said that the best way for him to showcase his product to people that have never used his particular brand of poop bags is for people to try them. And that's a sampling opportunity. So in terms of where sponsorship was able to help me, because of Paul's influence and his connections and my ability to use his poop bags instead of some other brand, allowed him to get the sampling opportunities that he needed, because I was able to hand them out at events. I was able to use them and tell people that this product really is awesome and we use this. I was able to gift them as door prizes and put them in swag and just as free giveaways that people could take at our live events. So when you talk, Dolores, about tasting, it reminds me of the sampling opportunity. Carolyn says networking, celebration of women, health, awesome. So where you can use sponsorship in your business, it might be to sponsor an event. It might be to do things like sponsor some of your business needs. So if you think about on a day-to-day basis, what do you need to run your business? There's different products or services that you use constantly, day in, day out. There are business marketing needs that you have, like business cards and banners and printed materials. You can get sponsors to cover the costs of some of the needs that you have in running your business. Some of you might travel for your business. Let me know on the chat box if you travel related to your business. I know that some of you are doing events, so do you ever travel for those events? I travel all the time around North America and actually other parts of the world, but my primary business is in North America. And so I'm constantly back and forth between Canada and the US for speaking engagements. And it's awesome when sponsors can assist with some of the costs, such as hotel costs or meals, things like that. The other ways, I'm just looking at my note, I don't want to forget anything. Oh, clothing, we talked about that. You could have clothing sponsored. And it may not bring that clothing may not impact your business bottom line, but it certainly does impact your personal bottom line, because if you're not having to spend, I'm not even going to ask you all what you spend on clothing every year, but it can add up. So if you were able to have a clothing sponsor like we did, who sponsored all of my clothing and jewelry and accessories for 3 years, imagine what I saved personally. That was money that I didn't have to spend out of my account. Dolores says as well, yes, she's traveling for all kinds of, it sounds like all kinds of events. Wonderful and very expensive for me. I would agree, Dolores, travel just adds up. So imagine if you had a sponsor that assisted with parts of the travel. Media, a lot of you use media, right, to promote your products and services, to promote your business, whether it's print media. Some of you might use traditional advertising. Some of you might use social media, purchasing ads. There's all kinds of ways that sponsorship can help you with media. In fact, on our Million Acts of Kindness tour, I had some amazing magazines that came on as our sponsors. So Canadian Traveler Magazine, which is just a beautiful magazine for those of you that love travel. And they also have a magazine called Explore. They were one of our key partners actually right from the beginning, from 2014 when we did our first tour. And they provided the opportunity for me to write for them. But also, they have a huge social media engine behind them. So all of my social media posts that I was putting out through my business were also populated by Canadian Traveler Magazine. Same thing with Edmonton Child Magazine and Fort McMurray Child Magazine, who has also been a key sponsor for me a long time. I'm allowed to write articles in there, and they do advertising for me as their contribution of sponsorship. And it reaches the audience that I was wanting to reach. Now, in terms of how else can sponsorship help you, it can help you with also I guess I can say that not only the marketing, but the promotional part of your business. So not just the banners and the printed materials you need, but the ability to have your message reach people around the world or in your locality, wherever it is that you're trying to market to. Sponsors have the ability to share your message for you. And if you remember when we were talking about it's easier to market someone else than it is yourself, that's the beauty of having sponsors when they start putting your message out there. But it also builds influence. Now, I'll just give you an example. When we were doing our Million Acts of Kindness tour, we had the RV. We're really about 2 weeks before we were heading out. It was that fast when we were kind of pulling the final details together. And I had this big aha. I thought, oh my gosh, technology sponsor. We're going to be doing live streaming and social media from the RV for the full 6 weeks. I am going to have the biggest cell phone bill in the world. Can you imagine my data roaming once I cross the states? And I mean, if you've driven through northern Canada, I mean, there's hours and hours where there's just no cell coverage, no internet coverage. And so I thought, wow, how are we going to manage this and fulfill my sponsor commitments, the agreements that I made to people? And I was talking to Fraser Way RV, our sponsor, and it was great. They said, wow, you know, Charmaine, we deal with TELUS. And I said, so do I actually. I've dealt with them for about 21 years. Fabulous to me over the 21 years, and I've had them personally and for business. And so our Fraser Way contacted TELUS and talked about the tour and invited them to come on as a partner for the tour and assist us with the coverage, with actually the technology needs that we needed to power our message out through social media and through online platforms. And it was amazing to have TELUS's support, not only with them powering the technology side, but also imagine when I would put a tweet out and then TELUS would retweet and comment and share. They have a way bigger audience than I do. And they also have a very large corporate audience. And part of my message was about kindness, acceptance, and respect in the workplace. So them pushing my social media out and saying how much they were loving our tour was so valuable. Now, one of the questions that came up is, what does a sponsorship agreement consist of and look like? You know what, Sandy, every single one of them is different. They really are. And this is where I'm going to talk about the number one mistake people make. I made this mistake many years ago as well when I started learning. The number one mistake that people make about sponsorship is they, first of all, go and ask for money without a relationship. So they create a sponsorship proposal or a one sheet and they just start sending it out to all these businesses. And so I always say, put yourself in the receiving shoes. So you're the sponsor that gets this email from somebody you've never met. They don't even know your name. So they've just kind of put dear sir or madam or no name on there. And you get the sponsorship proposal about this is the greatest event or this is the best project and we'd love you to give us $10,000 to support this project. And the person has never met you. Typically, just so you all know, those get shredded. They get shredded. I've interviewed a lot of sponsors, from oil companies to telecom communication companies to retailers. And the number one thing that they told me is that far too many entrepreneurs and nonprofit organizations are creating proposals and they're sending them to sponsors without a relationship. without ever having had the conversation. And the problem with that is not only that you're asking someone for money when they've never met you, that's a problem. But the second problem is you don't know what they need. We don't know what they need. So what about if our proposal, we put in, let's say we did a proposal for an event. We were trying to get an event sponsor. We put that proposal out there and submitted it all over. What we've done is we've said, you know, here's what I will do for you for a certain level of sponsorship. So people often use gold, silver, and bronze. That is mistake number 2. Every sponsor I've talked to since 2010 has told me no more gold, silver, bronze. What gold, silver, bronze is, if you're not sure what I'm speaking about, is typically when people do a sponsorship proposal, they create it to be generic. So for $5,000, our bronze sponsorship, we'll do these things for you. Put you on our website, which is a given, by the way. That's not a benefit to a sponsor. They expect you to do that anyways now. 10 years ago, it might have been a benefit, but now it's just sort of the way things work. But for $5,000 as a bronze sponsor, you get this and this and this and this and a free seat to the event. And we'll put you in our handouts and we'll put your logo on a sign. For $10,000 for the silver level, you get all of that and these 3 other things. And then for the gold level, $25,000 or whatever it is, you get all of that and more things. That's a real problem because we have said in the proposal that here's what you get for these certain amounts. But what if the sponsor doesn't need what you put in there? What if the sponsor doesn't need what you put in there? They just destroy the proposal. They actually give, you know, they give the proposal no thought because it's not customized. Every sponsor that I've interviewed has said what they really want to see people do is actually provide customized proposals. So if you think about it, to provide a customized proposal, what you actually need to do is have had met the sponsor, talked to the sponsor, figured out what they need, figured out what their marketing goals are, understood the audience, that very exact specific audience they're trying to reach, what kind of marketing helps their product the most. Is there an age demographic they're trying to get in front of? So when you understand all of that, because you've met with them, you've talked to them, you've essentially kind of planned the sponsorship together, then what you're, so right, coming back to Sandy's question, which is an awesome question, by the way, Sandy, I'm glad you asked it, is so that sponsor is going to consist, or that sponsorship proposal is really going to consist of what you've talked about with that sponsor. It's going to include information about you and your event. There's kind of that standard information that always goes in there, but the rest of it is really about what you and the sponsor have already talked about, and it's very customized for them. What you send the next sponsor, who by the way you've talked to and have built a relationship with, their proposal could look completely different. So I'll give you an example. The proposal that we provided to our RV sponsor was entirely different than the proposal for our media sponsors and our magazine sponsors and our other sponsors, because each one, in addition to that very generic information, what the project's about, information about me, information about our company, the guts of what we're going to do in the sponsorship was different from sponsor to sponsor. So Sandy, thanks for raising that question. And actually the whole sponsorship proposal piece comes after a whole bunch of steps. So the proposal actually doesn't come at the beginning, which is one of the mistakes people made, because they decide they need sponsorship and they create a proposal and they send it out. I did that in 2010. In 2010, I thought, wouldn't it be fun to have a series of book tours after my live launch of On Toby's Terms, just around the area. We were living in Edmonton at the time. And wouldn't it be fun to kind of just do Edmonton South, so Edmonton to Calgary, and spend 3 days doing a tour? I wrote a lovely letter about our tour and how excited we were. Remember, this is 2010, so I was still trying to learn what to do. And I put some levels in there, you know, gold, silver, bronze. And I sent the letter to 100 motorhome companies in Alberta, 100. And guess how many responses I got? I'm not going to tell you until I see the answers in the chat box. Take a wild guess. I sent out 100 generic, not customized letters to motorhome companies in Alberta. What's your guess on how many responses I got back by phone, email, or in writing? So I'm just going to give a minute here for answers. There'll be a prize for winners. All right, awesome. Well, Wendy and Carolyn and wait a second. Wendy, Carolyn, Megan, Leslie, you got it. 0. Not even 1, 0. I had 0 responses, and I made a big mess for myself. When I tried to contact them later, no one even wanted to talk to me. I broke the #1 rule. I didn't have a relationship with them. I sent them a proposal that had gold, silver, bronze, and I asked for money before I knew what they needed. And so I broke that rule. I didn't know what I didn't know back then. Now I know. So I got 0 back. And again, let's put ourselves in the position of an RV company. You receive a letter by email that maybe has your name, maybe doesn't. They've asked you to give you, you're the RV sponsor. They said, you know, this project is awesome. It's just going to help you so much. They don't say how it's going to help them. And would you please donate an RV for 2 weeks at no cost to us so we can travel around and do our book tour? Doesn't that sound awesome? And what would your response be getting a letter like that? Mine would be actually to turf it, you know, really to throw it out. So the relationship is key. So when Sandy had posed that awesome question about what a sponsorship proposal needs to have, it's going to have a lot of what your sponsor prospect has shared with you, because you've spent all that time building a relationship with them and really getting to know what they need. And I'm going to give you the exact steps here today. Carolyn said, yeah, that approach, Carolyn tried that and it wasn't very as successful as she hoped as well. And yeah, the past format for people was to do that. So customization works better. But the other reality is that you have to do a lot of asks to get a yes. So there's a lot of, you know, you might approach 20 people and get one prospect that's interested in your project. So it's really important to understand that one of the problems is that we really need to be clear on why a company would want to sponsor us. So, because just because, you know, I'll give you an example with one of my author clients, and she does events. So more like networking events than workshops, but they're really well attended networking events. And she has a really consistent audience and lots of opportunities to actually showcase sponsors to really promote them. And so one of the things that she had to do in figuring out sponsorship was to look at why would a sponsor want to sponsor her event or be involved in sponsoring her event, and what does she have to offer them. So this will actually be a piece of advice for all of you, is that I really want you to think about what you have to offer a company. Why would they want to sponsor you? Now let me share with you why sponsors have told me they have sponsored me. One of the things, one appeal to some sponsors is that I'm a speaker. I'm in front of corporate, nonprofit, and entrepreneur audiences all the time. Not just through speaking, but through social media, through the webinars that I do, through workshops that I do virtually and live, through my blogging, through my articles. All that is a way of sharing a message, and I'm also a speaker and trainer. That has a lot of appeal to many, many sponsors, because they might see you as someone who has a very specific audience that they are interested in getting in front of. Let's talk about schools for a minute, because I just want to share an example. This may not relate to all of you, but it's a really great way to look at something clearly. So with schools, it's really hard for big retailers and big brands, big businesses, to get into a school. And often schools don't want to be aligned just with one sponsor. They want to be able to have more support from more businesses. But to get in as a retail store into a school is really, really tough for that business. Now, why they might want to sponsor someone who goes in and does presentations to schools or has children's books for schools is that you become their conduit. You become the bridge from the sponsor to getting into the school. You become their bridge. You become their mechanism to help connect them with parents and staff that work at the school. So one of the reasons why someone might want to sponsor you is that they want to have the opportunity to connect with your audience. That's one reason they might sponsor you. Another reason that they might sponsor you is they might have a brand new product that they're trying to get out to a new market. Maybe I'll give you an example. At one of the workshops I was presenting in at the conference in Calgary called the Sponsorship Congress, which is a fantastic conference, by the way. It's put on by the Partnership Group, who are out of Calgary, my favorite sponsorship conference. And I was speaking there, and they had one of the head sponsorship decision makers for IBM. And I remember this example so clearly. They were marketing a new product, and it was going to be for a very different age group and a very different demographic. And they were, at that time, this is a few years ago, but they were very interested in getting in front of a new audience, and sponsorship was a way to do that. And they were partnering with and doing sponsorship with some entrepreneurs and businesses that had that very specific audience. So there's many reasons why sponsors will want to sponsor you. Connection to your audience, opportunities to sample their product, opportunities to reach a new audience, opportunities to get in front of an audience in a different way. So for example, if you have a sponsor that is great, like in traditional media, there's advertisements on TV, they're in print magazines, but maybe their social engagement is low. They may want to sponsor someone who has really high social engagement. Brand alignment. Brand alignment is another reason that someone might want to sponsor you. They may have interest in actually your event supporting their employees. So I'll give you an example. I do a lot of corporate speaking on conflict resolution and resilience and team building. And there's interest from sponsors because I can also provide that training internally to them as part of their sponsorship agreement. The list really goes on, and I'm going to send you all an ebook. I'll just mention this now so I don't forget later. I have an ebook called Building Your Circle of Corporate Champions and Sponsors. It basically goes through the 7 steps, some of which we're covering here today, but it goes through the 7 steps that I use day in, day out on sponsorship. And it will give you some of the tools that I actually use in finding sponsors, building a relationship with them, and then planning the sponsorship with them, and then doing the proposal for them. So that ebook is available, and what I'll do is you can just email me at charmaine@charmainehammond.com, or just email me when you got the email notification today saying that we're going live. Just respond back to that and just say, send me the ebook, and I'll email those to you as my gift to you. I think they'll be really super helpful. Now, one of the other questions that came up about sponsorship that really has to do with this whole process so that you can walk away today and start stepping into action. So we're not going to make gold, silver, bronze mistakes ever. We're always going to do the relationship building piece with sponsors so that there's never cold calling. We're going to research our sponsors. And these are all part of the whole learning about sponsorship. So one way that you're doing that today, learning about sponsorship, is by being here. Another way is that you'll get the ebook and you'll read the ebook. You might listen to this again. Now, here's the steps. So I want you all to grab a pen and a paper. Carolyn's saying, thank you, can't write fast enough. I'm actually talking slower than normal. I've got a little note for myself. Charmaine, talk slower. Do any of you do that? Put little stickies all over to remind yourself. As you can tell, I'm pretty passionate about this. So let me go back to the homework that I'm going to give you all. So as we start to understand sponsorship, let me just recap. It's a marketing relationship. So it means that sponsors are going to want to see things in return for their support. They want a return on investment. So what we need to do in figuring out what do we do as soon as this webinar is over to start learning about sponsorship, number one thing we need to do is write a list of what we need. So I actually want you, I'm going to give you a template, and I'll email that to you. I would actually like you to print the template off and then take a clipboard or a book so that you got something to write on, and you're going to walk through your whole house in your office, and you're going to write down everything that you use personally and everything that you use professionally for your business. When I mentioned earlier with my book launch, I had 40 sponsors. All of them were people I knew. All of them were people I knew. They were the easiest yeses to get. That's where you start. You're not gonna start calling Coca-Cola or Jergens or Dove. They are way too big for us. They're way too big for me. They sponsor really big projects with really big reach. What we are going to do is start local. So we write the list of what we need and what we use in our own life, on our business and in our personal lifestyle. And that's going to help us identify the next piece of homework, which is set list number 2 is your list of who you know. Your list of who you know. The 40 sponsors that I had for my book launch were people that I knew in different business circles. So here's some of the people who sponsored me. Caprice Consignment was where I've been buying clothes for years. They became my sponsor. My hairstylist, who I've been going to for years, I got my nails done there. They weren't doing my hair at the time. They became my whole personal grooming sponsor. And then threw in massages, a couple massages a month. I love that. My financial advisor was one of the people who bought books for all of the clients that she deals with. And then she bought books to actually hand out at events where she was exhibiting. My hairdresser, my hairstylist, actually later started buying boxes of my books to give away. And then she started selling them in her store. And then she started buying boxes of books to give away at events that she was exhibiting at, trade shows. I also had my graphic design artist who became my design sponsor. So those 40 people were people that I'd met in networking circles, just like Company of Women. You actually have the opportunity to collaborate together in so many more ways. So you've got your list of what you need. Now your list of who you know. You're going to have a list of all the people that you know, and then you're going to have, this is the juicy, juicy list, the list of where you do business right now. This is key. This was the list that I used to get the 40 sponsors for my book launch. What you're going to do is on that list that you're walking around your house with, you're going to start to sort of look around and notice where you're spending money every month. Your cell phone might be sitting on your desk, and you're going to add that to your list. You spend money on your cell phone. You spend money at the bank, through mortgages and loans and interest charges. You spend money on internet services. You spend money on insurance. And so I want you to write all of the areas that you spend money on in your business. And the reason this is helpful, is that those are going to be some of the first calls that you make, the first deeper relationship building calls that you make. Now, on the list that I send you, you're going to see there's a column on the right-hand side that actually asks you for the contact if you know the person. So I'll give you an example. At our bank, we deal with CIBC Bank. I had a particular bank manager and loans manager that we had dealt with for about 15 years. So she was one of the first people that I could go to because I already had a relationship with her. So it really expedited the process. I'll give you sort of a comparison dealing with your personal bank manager versus calling CIBC Canada, corporate office in Toronto. There's a much bigger relationship building time frame when you call the national offices. And most of the sponsors are telling me that if you want to have sponsorship and you're dealing with the national level, so you're calling either a really big company or dealing with the national level of a bank or insurance company, they're looking about 9 months is what you need at least to build a relationship. So that means if you have an event in 6 months, they're saying don't even phone us or call us. Our money's actually been spent. So right now, sponsors are actually looking at, many of them are looking at 2018. Some of my sponsors are not in the 2017 discussions because in 2016, they allocated their sponsorship dollars for 2017. So they're looking more than a year out. That's a really important piece of information so that you give sponsors the time they need. Because the reality is that when we're calling a sponsor, whether it's a bank or an insurance company or the local grocery store, if we know the local grocery store manager, we can expedite that very quickly. It might be a couple of conversations and then you land on a way to partner or have sponsorship together, and it happens really quickly. But when you're dealing with big companies or bigger brands, there's a series of calls, and they're called discovery calls, which you'll see in my ebook that I send, and I'll talk about it briefly, but these discovery calls take place over time. They take place over time, and you're learning about what the company needs so that you can customize that program for you. And while we're thinking this is really important because it's our baby, it's our project, they get hundreds, and some companies get thousands of proposals a month. One particular company that is not our sponsor, but we've been really working on the relationship building piece because we want them to be a sponsor in the future. They're a Canadian company, and she said that her office gets about 400 sponsorship proposals a month. A month. How do you stand out? How do we stand out against the other 399? So at the bigger the company, the higher level of the company, or the more national versus regional, there's a lot more competition for sponsorship dollars. But here's the good news. There's a lot of sponsorship dollars. You just have to give it the time that it takes to nurture those relationships. So you have your list of what you need. You have your list of who you know, who you do business with. And the last list is all about you. It's the list of what you have to offer. And we talked about that earlier on today's webinar, what you have to offer. Now, I actually do an exercise called Vital Statistics Friday. Friday is my day where I look at my metrics. I track on a spreadsheet. I can send you that as well. I track on a spreadsheet how many people follow me on Facebook, how many people I'm connected to on Twitter and LinkedIn. LinkedIn, by the way, this is a whole other conversation. We don't have time to get into it today, but it is a completely critical conversation, but needs a lot of time. LinkedIn is your most important social media platform for sponsorship. It really is. That's where I find the right person to get to, is LinkedIn. Many of the sponsor directors and decision makers in companies, if you go onto their website, it's even hard to find who to contact. And that was one of the questions that came up, was who do I even contact? That's one of the hardest things to do, is to figure out who in CIBC Bank, or who in TELUS, or who in Whole Foods, or who in a certain essential oil company. Who do you talk to about sponsorship? And then how do you get a hold of them? And here's a juicy, juicy, juicy tip that I'm going to give you. LinkedIn. That's exactly how you find out. Here's what you do. So first of all, you have to have a rockin' LinkedIn profile. Mine's a rockin' profile. I get a lot of work from my LinkedIn profile, and sponsors go and check me out. I can guarantee you. I had a call last week with a sponsor that I'm just starting the relationship building process with. This is a sponsor that I'm looking at to be a sponsor for my events like the Global Influence Summit that I'm doing in February in Florida. So it's a big, huge event for authors, speakers, and entrepreneurs. And this particular company, I think, would have a great opportunity to showcase their particular virtual products in front of my audience. So we're just at the relationship building stage and taking the time to do that. But what is really, really cool is that I'm learning lots about this company. I'm learning what their needs are, what they require from sponsorship, and like, this is really going to help me. But where LinkedIn comes in is I didn't know who to contact. It was sponsorship is not on their webpage anywhere. And I figured out who the owner of the company was, because there was a bio about him on the website, basically saying this is the gentleman who started the company. And no number, there's no phone number to call on their website. It's one of those contact forms. And, you know, people don't usually get back to you on those contact forms. So I thought, I have to find a way. So what I did, and I've been using this strategy for 3 years, and this is just a sort of a testimonial to why this works. So I employed the strategy that I've been doing for 3 years, that I teach people. I went on LinkedIn and I typed in the word in the search bar, sponsorship, and that company's name. And lo and behold, his name came up. But I already knew his name from his website, so I could have just typed in his name, but I wanted to make sure that my strategy still worked, and it did. So what happened is I LinkedIn messaged him and talked to him about I actually didn't talk to him about what I'm doing. I talked to him about his product and how I think this is really revolutionary products for authors and speakers, and I would love the opportunity to connect with him. We had our first call. I'm demoing his product next week, and if all goes well, if I love his product, the next conversation we'll be talking about how we might be able to work and play together to create some win-win agreements. So the real key is building a relationship. The real key is knowing what you have to offer sponsors, giving yourself the time to build sponsorship into your business. And most importantly, it's about going to the people that you know first and looking at how you might be able to collaborate or work together. Just like the example I gave of our book launch, where 40 sponsors were all people that I knew and had worked with, or I do business with already. That's really where it starts. And then on another webinar, I'll be doing some specific webinars about discovery calls, which is how do you get the conversation going with the sponsor? You've got them on the phone. What do you say? What do you ask them? What is the kind of process that's going to build a relationship with them? And how do you get the questions that are so clear to help you understand what they want and need, what their marketing goals are, what they need to have ROI, return on investment on, so that you can start to really find a fit between you and this potential sponsor. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing a mail out to you right after this webinar with the ebook and the templates, and you hopefully are going to be doing some homework, filling out those lists. I welcome all of you. If you ever have questions, please connect with me. I'm active on social media, so I really actually hope that you will follow me and connect with me on all my social media platforms, which I will put in the follow-up email so that you can connect with me. Number one, if I know what you're doing, I can be out there being a champion for you to help spread your message, because the more engagement that you get around your social messages, the faster it goes across the world. So please connect with me on Facebook. As you're working through your 4 lists that you're going to receive, I really want you to be thinking about what can I do next? Because here's the last mistake that people often make is they get the information and then they don't put it into action. And I've done that. Oh my gosh, have I done that over the years? I have done that. And so what I want you to do is step into action by completing the list and then starting to get a dream list of sponsors, and every day doing something related to sponsorship. One action, because here's what I know. If you were to do one action a day for a whole month, you are 30 steps closer to getting sponsorship than you were yesterday. And you're 30 steps ahead of people who haven't decided to take action yet. So it's really, really important. Dolores has a question I'll answer. Have you ever dealt with charitable foundations that may also be linked to corporations? I love that question, Dolores. Yes, yes, yes. So here's a final tip for all of you. If you can find a charity, or as Dolores said, a foundation that you totally believe in, it's got to be a really juicy, good, positive fit for you folks. But if you can find a charity that you support, you can find ways to actually bring them into your sponsorship model, and they will often bring you into theirs. So for example, with the Global Influence Summit last year that was in San Diego, it's an event I host, and I'll send you information about it because I would love for you to be there. We're going to be diving really deep into sponsorship. You'll also be hearing from some sponsors that I'm interviewing. And so what we're going to be doing is addressing questions like, how do you engage nonprofit organizations? If you can find a charity that you support, you can actually build them into your sponsorship model and make a donation. Like we did last year to the Global Influence Summit, we chose Project Forgive, which I love Project Forgive. They were our charity. So we did raffles for them and made a donation to that organization. And it's critical in terms of that goodwill that you build in your sponsorship program. So great question. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm going to go through the chat box after today, and if there's any questions we didn't have a chance to address, I will send the answers out to you all in an email so that you all can benefit from that learning. We're just coming up to the top of the hour, so as we close today, I would like to thank Company of Women. I'm speaking at eWomen next week in Toronto. Company of Women. Boy, oh boy. I just love Ann Day and all of the chapter directors. They have been huge supports to me. So Company of Women, thank you so much for sponsoring this webinar series and all the speakers that you're bringing in. And I'll see you in Hamilton next Friday, the 23rd, I believe that is. And I also want to thank all of you for coming on today, because this is the first part of the learning and putting what you're learning into action. So you've got your list, you've got your homework. You're now one day closer to being able to achieve sponsorship for your business, to launch your dreams and business projects. I'm Charmaine Hammond. Thank you so much for joining me.